The memory test was simple. I asked Margaret to remember 3 words: apple, sunset, democracy. I told her I would ask again in 10 minutes. She nodded. We talked. I examined her. Routine appointment. 10 minutes later, I said, Margaret, the 3 words. She looked at me. She smiled. She said, I'm sorry, Dr. Hayes. I can't remember a single one. Margaret was 68 years old. Her last brain scan was completely normal. Her doctor had told her family, no signs of Alzheimer's. He was right. There were no signs of Alzheimer's, because the signs of Alzheimer's don't show up on a brain scan until the disease has already been destroying tissue for 8 to 10 years. By the time your doctor sees it on a scan, you have already lost ground you will never get back. I am Dr. Eleanor Hayes, 28 years as Chief of Geriatric Medicine. Over 12,000 patients past the age of 65. And I have identified 4 things that happen in the brain and body years before an Alzheimer's diagnosis that almost no one is measuring. Not one of them shows up on a standard cognitive test. Not one appears on an MRI. But every single one is detectable today in your own home. And 3 of the 4 are completely reversible if you catch them early enough. Margaret had all 4 for 7 years before her diagnosis, and nobody saw them, including me at first. Stay with me, because sign number 3 is the one that changes everything, and it is probably happening to someone you love right now. Before I show you the 4 signs, you need to understand something that most doctors, including most neurologists, are only beginning to accept. Alzheimer's disease does not begin in your 70s. It does not begin in your 60s. For most people, the biological process that eventually produces Alzheimer's begins in their late 40s and early 50s. 20 years before the first forgotten name. 20 years before the first missed appointment. 20 years of silent damage. The reason we miss it is the same reason we miss so many things. We are looking for the disease. We are not looking for what creates the disease. And what creates it announces itself quietly in 4 very specific ways, long before any scan would show a single thing. Sign number 1, the speed at which you fall asleep, not whether you sleep well, not how long you sleep, how fast you go from awake to asleep. Most people think falling asleep quickly is a sign of good health. It is not. A study from the University of California followed 4,000 adults over 65 for 8 years. The ones who fell asleep in under 5 minutes consistently, what sleep researchers call pathological sleepiness, had a 63% higher rate of cognitive decline over the study period. 63%. Not from being tired, from what causes the pathological sleepiness. When your brain falls asleep that fast, it is not relaxing efficiently. It is crashing. The difference is everything. A healthy brain transitions to sleep in 10 to 20 minutes. A gradual, controlled process where the brain organizes memory, clears metabolic waste, and prepares its repair systems. A brain under chronic stress, oxygen deprivation, or early neurological strain crosses into sleep, like a system that has simply run out of power. Here is your test. Tonight, when you lie down, note the time. Do not try to fall asleep faster. Do not try to stay awake longer. Just note how long it actually takes. If you are consistently asleep in under 5 minutes, that is not a gift. That is a signal. Margaret told me she had always been a good sleeper. Out in 3 minutes, she said, never had a problem. That 3 minutes had been happening for 11 years. But sign number 1 is not the one that stopped me cold. Sign number 2 is, because this one is happening in the middle of every conversation you have, and you cannot feel it. Sign number 2, word retrieval gaps, not forgetting words entirely, not losing a sentence mid-thought, the fraction of a second hesitation before a word arrives, the tiny pause where a word that should be instant takes just slightly too long. You say, pass me the, and then it comes. Spoon, remote, keys. It came, so you don't worry about it. But here is what is actually happening inside your brain in that pause. Your hippocampus, the brain's primary memory access system, is routing around a damaged pathway. It found the word, but it had to find a detour to get there. And every time it takes a detour, it is telling you something. The road that used to be there is narrowing. A study from Johns Hopkins tracked word retrieval speed in adults aged 60 to 80 for 12 years. Because the ones with the most significant slowdown in retrieval speed, even when they successfully found the word, showed 4 times the rate of Alzheimer's diagnosis by the end of the study. 4 times. Not because they forgot the word, because it took longer to arrive. The test for this is simple. Name as many animals as you can in 60 seconds, out loud, without repeating. Write down the number, 20 or more. Strong retrieval function, 15 to 19. Early monitoring needed, below 15. This needs immediate attention. Do this test monthly. If your number is dropping, even by 2 or 3, that decline is the signal. Not the number itself, the direction. Sign number 3. I told you about this one. This is the one that changes everything. Your sense of smell. Specifically, whether it has gotten slightly, barely, almost imperceptibly weaker in the last 3 to 5 years. Not lost, not gone, just slightly less. Foods that used to smell strong smell a little less sharp now. Coffee, garlic, gasoline. You can still smell them. But something has shifted. The olfactory nerve, the nerve that carries scent signals to your brain, runs directly through the entorhinal cortex. The entorhinal cortex is the first region of the brain where Alzheimer's-related protein deposits appear. Years before memory symptoms begin. Years before any scan would show damage. A landmark study from the Rush University Medical Center followed 1,200 adults for 12 years. And the ones who showed measurable decline in smell sensitivity in their early 60s had a 5 times higher rate of Alzheimer's diagnosis by their mid-70s. 5 times from a sense of smell that was not gone. Just slightly less than it used to be. Here is how you test this tonight. Open your spice cabinet. Take out black pepper. Hold it 6 inches from your nose. You should smell it immediately and strongly. Now try cinnamon, then garlic powder, then coffee grounds. Each one should register instantly and distinctly. If any of them seem duller than you expect, if you have to bring them closer than you used to, note it. Then do the same test with someone else in your household. Compare. Your nose knows something your MRI does not. Margaret scored a 6 out of 10 on a standardized smell test when I ran it at her appointment. She had scored a 9 out of 10 4 years earlier at a different clinic. 3 points of smell loss in 4 years. By the time she forgot apple, sunset, democracy. Her olfactory pathway had been declining for 7 years. Sign number 4. This one is the most actionable and the most reversible. your resting inflammation level, specifically in the hours after you wake up, not the inflammation from an injury, not from an illness. The chronic, invisible, low-grade inflammation that your brain is swimming in every single day. We already know from sign 2 of our last conversation that chronic inflammation damages blood vessels, joints, and organs. But here is what most people do not know. The brain has its own inflammation system. It is called neuroinflammation. And when it activates chronically, when your brain's immune cells stay on high alert day after day, year after year, they do not just fight infection. They begin to attack the brain's own tissue. A 20-year study from the National Institute on Aging tracked neuroinflammation markers in adults from their 50s onward. The ones with elevated neuroinflammation in their late 50s showed brain shrinkage at a rate 40% faster than those without. And the most powerful predictor of neuroinflammation level, what they ate in the 2 hours before sleep, every single night. Here are the 4 neuroinflammation behaviors to check against your own life right now. 1. You regularly eat within 2 hours of going to sleep. 2. You wake up with a headache or a heavy feeling behind your eyes at least twice a week. 3. Your thinking feels clearest in the late morning, not when you first wake up, but an hour or 2 after. 4. You feel a noticeable difference in your sharpness on days after you drank alcohol the night before, even just one drink. If 3 or more of those describe your regular life, your brain is inflamed every morning when it is supposed to be at its clearest. And that inflammation is not neutral. It is active. It is doing something. Now let me tell you what happened after I told Margaret the truth. She was 68. 4 signs, all present. 7 years of quiet progression. I told her what I am telling you now. She asked the question everyone asks. Hon, is it too late? I said, I cannot reverse what is already gone, but I can show you how to stop what is still happening, and I can show you how to protect what is still there. Margaret made 3 changes. First, she stopped eating after 7 p.m. Not a diet, not a restriction, a window. Kitchen closed at 7 every night. Within 6 weeks, she told me the heavy morning feeling was gone. Within 3 months, her word retrieval score, the animal naming test, went from 14 to 19. 5 words in 90 days. Second, she started a specific morning light protocol. 10 minutes of natural outdoor light within 30 minutes of waking. Not exercise, not a walk necessarily, just standing outside, facing east, eyes open. A natural morning light resets the brain's circadian clock, the same system that governs sleep onset speed, inflammation cycling, and neurological repair timing. Within 8 weeks, her sleep onset time went from 3 minutes to 14. Her brain stopped crashing into sleep. It started landing. Third, she added 1 thing to her morning: 60 seconds of smell training, 4 small jars, rose, lemon, clove, eucalyptus, eyes closed, 1 deep breath each, every morning. This is not alternative medicine. This is olfactory nerve rehabilitation. The same protocol used in clinical settings after COVID-related smell loss. Repeated stimulation of the olfactory pathway creates new neural connections around damaged tissue. It does not restore what is gone, but it builds around it. 12 months later, Margaret's smell test score went from 6 to 8. She still forgets things. I will not tell you she does not, but she has not gotten worse. in 12 months with a disease that progresses in everyone I have ever seen. She has not gotten worse. Here is what I need you to do before tomorrow morning, tonight. Note what time you eat your last meal. Note what time you go to sleep. Note how long it takes you to fall asleep. Tomorrow morning, stand outside for 10 minutes within 30 minutes of waking. This week, do the animal naming test. Write down your number. Do it again in 30 days. This week, do the smell test with your spice cabinet. 4 signs, all detectable. 3 of the 4 directly addressable without a prescription, without a hospital, without a scan. I think about Margaret every time I see a patient come in with a clean MRI and a worried family. The scan is clean, but I check the 4 signs, and I remember what clean means. It means we haven't lost too much yet. It does not mean nothing is happening. My father felt like he was disappearing. Margaret forgot apple, sunset, democracy. Your brain is talking to you right now. The question is whether you know how to listen.